Hey everybody, it's Ed. All right, I came across this article, and this was an article that was in the Los Angeles Times. I'm going to try and show you the headline. It says, "It is 2022. Does Elvis Presley still matter?" Ooh. All right. I didn't read this whole article. I did begin to read it, and then I realized it was kind of lengthy. So let me try and read it to you the best that I am able to, and let's see what this has to say. So, again, this was written on June 23rd. Well, it was in the edition of the Los Angeles Times on June 23rd, 2022, which was the day before the Elvis movie was released. So, let's see what they say. We ready? All right, it says, thanks to Baz Luhrmann's lavish new biopic, Elvis Presley is about to have a moment. He needs one. The second half of the 20th century, for those who came of age during it, was in essence one giant Elvis moment. He was at the epicenter of pop culture from the opening well of his first number one hit, Heartbreak Hotel, in 1956, to his death in 1977 and beyond. John Lennon said, quote, without Elvis, there would be no Beatles, unquote, encapsulating the seismic effect Presley had upon popular music. He had 18 number one hits, including such standards of the rock and roll era as Jailhouse Rock, Don't Be Cruel, Hound Dog, It's Now or Never, and his earliest records for Sun captured a kinetic blend of country, blues, and pop, a hybrid that would become known as rockabilly, while his later years as a Vegas showman established a path toward marathon. I'm sorry, crack screen. Uh, all right. Vegas showman established a path toward maturation for generations of pop stars to come. Presley's hold on the population consciousness extended beyond mere records. Intergenerational and sexual politics, the lure of Hollywood, and the dark side of the American dream. Blessed with the preternatural good looks, Elvis exuded such a palpable carnal charisma that his 1956 appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show caused a sensation because of his sexy gyrations. Famously, the CBS censors insisted that the singer be shot from the waist up. The image of the young, rebellious rockabilly cat would eventually give way to its after picture, the bloated 70s crooner. That persona, spangly jumpsuits that accentuated his increasing heft, mutton chops, karate kicks, became the pervasive one in pop culture. Thanks to legions of Elvis imitators and scores of myths about Presley's excessive appetites, stories that worked their way into movies and song. The era seems quite distant from the vantage of 2022. It's been 20 years since the compilation Elvis 30 number one hits topped the Billboard charts, aided by the JXL remix of A Little Less Conversation. It has also been 20 years since Eminem cracked that kids were embarrassed their parents still listen to Elvis, which itself seemed a little outdated at the time. Michael Stipe's Elvis impression on REM's Man on the Moon, a tribute to comedian Andy Kaufman's Presley parody, may have been the last time Presley registered as cool, and that was 1992. Who's this author? To be honest, no one I know under 30 cares or knows much about Elvis, says Pooja Patel, editor-in-chief of the taste-making music site Pitchfork. The classic version of rock and roll just doesn't exist the way it once did, and that's in large part because younger audiences are less interested in it. Enter the biopic. Over the last few years alone, Bohemian Rhapsody thrust Queen back into the spotlight and won Rami Malek an Oscar for his portrayal of its lead singer Freddie Mercury. Rocketman helped cement the legend of Elton John. Jennifer Hudson brought Aretha Franklin's story to life in Respect, while Danny Boyle's recent Hulu series Pistol tells the tale of Six Pistols through the eyes of guitarist Steve Jones. But is Elvis too old, not to mention too white and too male, for resurrection in 2022? His last top 10 hit, Burning Love, arrived a half a century ago, and his peak and that of his pioneering 50s rock and roll peers is even further in the past. Sean Ross, editor of the Ross on Radio newsletter and an observer of radio trends, notes oldies radio stations pushed away from the 50s close to 20 years ago, When the center of the format became the 70s, the Elvis music you heard became a few post-comeback titles: Suspicious Minds, Burning Love, and The Ghetto. Ross adds that the term oldies itself is antiquated within the radio industry. Instead, this format is called classic hits and is mostly focused on the 80s and is starting to push into the 90s and beyond at this point, says Ross. Classic hit stations have been living without Elvis since at least the mid-2010s. Presley performs respectively on streaming services according to statistics from Luminate Entertainment Data, the organization that provides data for the Billboard charts. Luminate tracked a total of 13,791 radio spins of Presley's music during the first quarter of 2008. This year, there were only 5,896. Over the last 2 years, Presley ranked in the mid 200s for overall streams. Save for Frank Sinatra, he's the oldest artist on these charts, a testament to his enduring popularity among older generations, but also a suggestion that the early rock and roll era is fading from the collective consciousness, existing in some kind of hazy netherworld between Ken Burns' reveries of the pre-modern times and the Beatles' Get Back documentary. Lerman's new Elvis movie is an audacious attempt to reframe Presley. The film, starring Austin Butler as the King and Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker, is designed not with historical accuracy in mind. Rather, it presents an idea of Elvis Presley, emphasizing how he shook up society by ignoring racial boundaries and sexual conventions, accentuating this rebellion by not relying on rock and roll, the wild, unkempt music that Presley made, but hip-hop and pop. The soundtrack for Elvis is rife with interpolations that use Presley's original recordings as a mere suggestion for the finished track. The Sun single, That's All Right, is the basis for a collaboration between Diplo and rapper Sway Lee. Doja Cat's Vegas is constructed on a loop from Big Mama Thornton's original Hound Dog, and The King and I finds Eminem riffing on Blue Suede Shoes, as Dr. Dre cuts up the main riff from Jailhouse Rock. When the soundtrack does showcase original, unremixed Elvis music, which is the best part of it, it's from the over-the-top Vegas years, not the early days. All right, I don't know who this author is, but I'm going to stop reading at this point because it's a very long freaking article. But let's go to the bottom where they wrap it up, and let's see how they do wrap it up. If they do wrap it up. All right, let's see. All right, Presley's music does not sound modern. It's an artifact from a different America, one that is fading in popular consciousness. His earliest rockabilly sides sound raw and nervy, almost primitive in their simplicity, a wildness that's a foreign concept in modern music. Chris Isaak, a singer who has kept the fire of early rock and roll alive throughout his career and who appears on the Elvis soundtrack as well as providing the vocals for country star Hank Snow in the movie, has seen how Presley's peers are being forgotten. Quote, I was talking to a young girl and she's a successful singer, so she knows music, Isaak recounted. I said, are you putting harmonies like the Everly Brothers on this? And there was a blank look in her eye. I said, are you acquainted with the Everly Brothers? She had no clue. That was kind of shocking to me. I think a new generation will see this movie and go, wow, I love this music. Who is this guy? Maybe it's inevitable that Elvis Presley would fade as rock and roll recedes into the history books. Elvis left the building a long time ago. Earlier this month, Graceland celebrated its 40th anniversary of being open to the public. In 3 more years, Graceland will have been open to the public longer than Elvis Presley was alive. Lerman's movie might goose ticket sales to Graceland, and perhaps Presley will rack up healthy numbers on Spotify. But these may wind up as temporary corrections to the permanent problem of the decline of rock and roll. Once a sound of youthful rebellion, rock and roll is now a part of history, which means Elvis resides in the past, not the present. Without reintroduction, we forget who Julius Caesar is, says Isaak. Doesn't matter how great you were in your moment, you will be forgotten. All things fade. Let that sink in. I got nothing else to say, actually. Just let that sink in. Leave a comment if you would like. And yeah, if you want, you can go and read this article yourself. Again, it was Los Angeles Times. But all you really need to do is just Google or whatever search engine you would like to use and just type in, does Elvis Presley still matter? Or you can type in the full title. It's 2022. Does Elvis Presley still matter? Well, you know what my answer is. And in case you don't know my answer, I would have to say, astoundingly yes. Definitely still matters. But I guess it depends on who else you ask. All right. But again, like I said, leave me a comment if you would like. Let me know what you think. Appreciate you watching. Good to yourselves, good to each other. Take care, everybody.